Hello. As I'm making this video about the poetry, the reason I'm making it is because I'm going to show you one poem that I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about this in depth, but if I were... Where's it gone? I'm sure you don't want to hear me write, see and read and sit there and look at all of this. And I'm sure you'd much rather hear it from my amazing voice. So yeah, throughout this video I'll be reading the poems that either I thought of or I was linking back to from what I've read in the past, and things that I picked out to read to try and get some inspiration for the poem that I've now written already, but I've only now just gotten around to this video. But while I was writing, I thought it's really important for me to do a little bit of research, read some of the poems just to give me some inspiration. And so I read through some poems, I circled some things. Obviously the poems aren't always about what I'm writing about, so I did look into what they are, actually the meaning behind them. But it's always good to get some whether it's just language, patterns, metaphors, similes, just try and pull a few things out there, or just to see how those poems made me feel and if I can portray that feeling in my own poem. But I'm not a poet, so you get what you're given. And I think I did pretty well. I'm quite pleased with it. But first poem, I'm not going to read this all out to you because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of poem. You don't want to hear it. I don't have a lot to say about it because this one was recommended to me by my boss at work when I was trying to think, when I told him I wanted to make a narrative poem and stuff like that. This is something he recommended to me. It's called The Vampire by John Stagg. I read you the first stanza just so you get a feel for it. I'm not going to say anything more than it's very narrative, and that's what I wanted to create. Although this one does have dialogue. I didn't as in quotes that characters within the poem are saying. I'm not doing that. I've made a reference to the boy thinking his thoughts in his head, but it's not a spoken word. I don't want that. But anyway, so here's the first stanza. Why looks my lord so deadly pale? Why fades the crimson from his cheek? Why can my dearest husband ail? Thy heartless cares, O Herman, speak. So, it's got an AABB rhyme scheme. I'm pretty sure it's all 4-line stanzas. Yeah, exactly what I was going for. AABB, short stanzas, a lot longer than what I was going to do, because this would probably cover quite a long thing, but it's very narrative, that's what I want. If you read through it, there's a whole story in there. That's one poem. Boshed off the list. Bet you thought this video was going to be long. Don't worry, there's more to come. So next we'll talk about, this is called Songs from an Evil Wood by Lord Dunsany Edward Plunkett. You couldn't have a longer name, could you? So this poem realistically is actually about the divine... Hang on. So this one is actually a war poem. It's about how the land was wrecked after the war. It's about the absence of divine wrath and silence, and it's about death selection, so natural order appears different to human suffering. The woods are described to be violent and sentient and chaotic. It's about the wreckage of the war. So let's read. This is really awkward. There is no wrath in the stars, they do not rage in the sky. I look from the evil wood and find myself wondering why. They do not scream out and grapple star against star, seeking for blood in the woods, as all things around me are. They do not glare like the sky, or flash like the deeps of the wood, but they shine softly on in their sacred solitude. To their happy haunts, silence has flown, she whom we loved of old, and know it now she is gone. When will she come again, though for 1 second only? She whom we loved is gone, and the whole world is lonely. And the elder giants come, sometimes trampling from afar, though the weird and flickering light made by an earthly star. And the giant with his club, and the dwarf with rage in his breath, and the elder giants from far, they are the children of death. They are all abroad tonight, and are breaking the hills with their brood, and the birds are all asleep, even in Plug Street wood. Somewhere lost in the haze, the sun goes down in the cold, and birds in this evil wood chirrup home as of old. Chirrup, stare, and are still, on the high twigs frozen and thin. There is no more noise for them now, and the long night sets in. Of all the wonderful things I have seen in this wood, I marvel most at the birds, at their chirp, and their quietude. Chud. For a giant smites with his club, all day the tops of the hill. Sometimes he rests at night, oftener he beats them still. And a dwarf with a grim blackened mane raps and repeated rage, all night in the valley below, on the wooden walls of his cage. I met with death in this country, with his scythe and his hollow eye. Walking the roads of Belgium, I looked, and he passed me by. Since he passed me by in Plug Street, in the wood of the evil name, I shall not now lie with the heroes, I shall not share their fame. Else shall I never be as they are, a name in the land of the free, since I looked on death in Flanders, and he did not look at me. So, again, pretty narrative. So although it does have a rhyme scheme, the way its rhyme scheme has gone, you have to pronounce words a different way. And although that can work, I don't think I really want to do that. Sorry, I've got tea. I think I'd rather keep it quite simple, especially because I'm going to have a voice actor saying it. But I want to keep an AABB rhyme scheme with mine because it feels a bit more childish, a bit more like fun. It's when you think of poetry, like rhyme. And I don't want to have to say words in a certain way to make it rhyme. I do that a little bit sometimes, but not as crazy as this, like saying wood for wood. Not a bit of me, personally. But although like the elder giants and the giants that smite with their clubs and the dwarfs and all that in this poem, they are like metaphors for the artillery and machine guns of the war, because it's a war poem. These are like Norse and Celtic archetypes. These are like folklore. These are like, but and they're described as evil because it's the evil wood, which I want my wood to be the evil wood. You know, it's not gonna be Plug Street, but so they're not described as ancient or noble, but they are described as they are the children of death, and then death is later described. But yeah, for the most part, I like it. I was more looking for language in this one, so things like wrath and rage, blood, wood. What else did I circle? Why did it like say it for the personification? Like, why do they not scream out like the stars? Why are they not screaming? Like, what? Like, there's horrendous things that's happened here. Everything's wrecked. But why are you quiet? Why are you silent? Say something. But it's the stars. It can't. They're stars. But I like this kind of bringing something that's not truly alive and sentient and turning it into a sentient being, especially in mine, because I want it to feel like the woods are alive, like something is thriving, that like things are moving. So that's what I kind of picked out of that poem. That's what I want to do, and it really kind of put that idea in my brain. Like I already kind of knew, but I was like, I don't know how I could make this work, and seeing that someone else can make that work, fabulous, really helpful. I'm getting through this quickly, don't you worry. So the next one is Song of the Evil Spirit of the Woods, written by Thomas Moore. So this one also talks about sort of these like folklore-y elemental creatures in the poem, but it's about I've written it in a bit more concise way than I can say, but it's about the land being taken from the indigenous people. It's about the colonisation of the land. And obviously in a modern day we see that as bad, but when this is written it was less so. This is a very political piece because it almost seemed like they were saying like, so the I'm not very eloquent, am I? So the resistance of these creatures, they're described to be protecting the land of the indigenous. They're given across as evil, but from a more modern mind and perspective, we got to understand that a lot of us believe that the colonisation was wrong. The treatment of these people was wrong. We gave them illnesses, we turned them into slaves. It was horrible. But from when this was written, it wasn't really seen. It was seen as like, yeah, we're owed this land. But even in this poem, it sort of does give this idea that like, yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty rough, and they were just trying to protect their land. But whether people at the time when they read this and when Thomas More wrote this thought that, I don't know, because I don't know him. So I hope you enjoy me reading another poem. This one's got a lot. And I don't think I'm not going to talk about stanza length and form, just because that is definitely not how the poem was written. I'm sorry, but that's not right. I'm pretty sure that's just an error with whoever put this online, which allowed me to print it, because Thomas More, you can't be that naughty, can you? Because that is terribly cheeky. So, Song of the Evil Spirit of the Woods. Now the vapour hot and damp, shed by day's expiring lamp, through the misty ether spreads, every ill and the white man dreads, fiery fever's thirsty thrill, fitful ague's shivering shrill. Hark, I hear the traveller's song, as he winds the woods along. Christian, 'tis the song of fear, wolves around thee, night is near. And the wild thou darest to roam, think 'twas once the Indian's home. Hither sprites who love to harm, wheresoever you work your charm, by the creeks or by the brakes, where the pale witch feeds her snakes, and the cayman loves to creep, torpid to his wintry sleep, where the birds of carrion flits, and the shuddering murderer sits, lone beneath a roof of blood, while upon his poison's food. From the corpse of him he slew, drops the chill and gory dew. Hither bend ye, turn ye hither, eyes that blast and wings that wither, cross the wandering Christian's way, lead him ere the glimpse of day, many a mile of maddening error, through the maze of night and terror, till the morn behold him lying on the damp earth, pale and dying. Mock him when his eager sight seeks a cordial cottage light, glean then like a lightning bug, tempt into the den that's dug for the foul and famished brood of the she-wolf gaunt for blood, or unto the dangerous pass o'er the deep and dark morass, where the trembling Indian brings belts of porcelain, pipes and rings, tributes to be hung in air to the fiend presiding there. Then when night's long labour past, wildered faint he falls at last, sinking where the causeway's edge moulders in a slimy sedge. There let every noxious thing trail its filth and fix its sting. Let the bull-toad taint him over, round him let mosquitoes hover, in his ears and eyeballs tingling, with his blood their poison mingling, till beneath the solar fires, ranking all, and retching expires, and wretched, rankling all, and wretch expires. I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm getting my tongue twisted. Also, I think I'm just nervous filming myself, which I'm usually not that bad. So, we can ignore that. But yeah. So these creatures that are referenced in here, they're meant to be known, they're elemental bestial forces that are to mislead and destroy. So you've got the sprites, the witches. I've read others and I just cannot remember them now. Got no, that's a different thing I'm talking about. You heard them when I said them. But again, even at the start where it says now the vapour hot and damp, it gives you a feeling you know what it's like when you're walking through somewhere it's really humid and the air feels heavy and you feel hot and claggy and gross. That's what I want to do. So these the way it's speaking, the language it's using, I was taking inspiration from. I was picking out these words, storing them in my head, and then when I was writing words I could use, I was thinking back to these poems, this one included. So yeah, it's got a AABB rhyme scheme as well. That's what I want. A little bit less narrative. It is still, but it's not as obvious. I mean, it's obvious, but it isn't as crazy as the vampire one that I didn't read to you because it was far too long. But yeah, so it's talking about territorial violation is causing supernatural consequences. What is my film about? Someone going onto this territory, destroying it, supernatural consequences. This poem is a good version for it. But yeah, I also like it where it says let the bull toad taint him over, round him let the mosquitoes hover, in his ears and eyeballs tingling. How gross is that? The effects on his own body I want to use that. And looking back, I did use something like that. I talked about like the scraping. At first I said like scraping the marrow. Obviously there's no marrow in Yuri, I learned. So like still using like the effects it has on his, like specifically like on the body. Just stuff like that. Like it's grim, it's gross, but it's still poetic. It's metaphorical. It's not literal, but it's got that feeling. But it talks about the wolves and the fevers. They link together because the wolves are meant to symbolise like the disease and illnesses that these people couldn't fight because they never built an immune system to certain diseases that we carried and killed them. Overall, really like it. I also like the way certain words like it like says tis, or like little quotation mark tis, and so like over, you get rid of the V, put a little themadob. Like it just brings it into that more like accented thing, like a way of speaking, a way of dialogue, a way of dialect, and it just brings you into that like accent almost. And I really want mine to come across like we're basing it as if it's in Cumbria. We're making it a Cumbrian film, so it'd be quite nice to like, even if it's not in the writing, for when I'm working with the voice actor, if they know to like say it how they would say it with your accent. Because when I read, I mean I'm not today because I'm tongue tied for some reason, but I've got a frog in my throat, but I end up speaking a lot nicer. Like on this video I'm speaking a lot nicer than I do when I'd be reading it out, like if I was reading it to, no, when I read out loud, I'm reading something, I read it nicely, but when this person's doing it, they can't be doing that. They need to speak how they would speak. It needs to be spoken as if they're telling a story that is memorised in their head, and then they're not having to read out this poem. So, the next one is from my sixth form days, and I'm very much aware this is not an English literature course, so don't worry, I won't be reading all of these out. I'm just going to be talking about why I thought of it, and then I've got another one for my college days I don't have a copy of. But anyway, so this is The Flea by John Donne. So the reason I thought about this one is because it's kind of got somewhat gross language in the way he describes it. The poem is about a man trying to convince a woman to have sex with him, and he uses this metaphor of a flea. Back in the time this was written, between 1572 to 1631, I'm not sure when this one was specifically written, but there was an idea that bodily fluids mixing means you've had intimacy, and so he's a metaphor of a flea hopping onto her, sucking a little bit of her blood, and then hopping onto him and sucking a little bit of his blood, and then the blood mingling inside the flea. He basically says, we've already had sex, so we should actually have sex. Crazy, I know, but the language is great. It's a really good poem. The next one I'm going to show you is kind of even grosser, and I'll explain that one to you. But again, they're beautiful poems. I sound like a little nerd, but I don't care. I love language. So, anyway, this is The Flea. I think this is also an AABB rhyme scheme. Fabulous. A little bit longer stanzas, and it's almost as if he's speaking it to her. So it's almost got this narrative purpose, but it is an unreliable narrator because it is him speaking to her. And there's a good Volta in here. I don't really have a Volta in my poem, but we're not going to talk about that. So, mark but this flea, and mark in this, how little which thou deniedst me is. It sucked me first, and now it sucks thee, and in this flea our two bloods mingled be. Thou know'st that this can be said, a sin nor shame, nor loss of maidenhead, yet this enjoys before it woo, and pampered swells with blood made of two, and this, alas, is more than we could do. Oh stay, 3 lives in one flea spare, where almost, yea more than married are. This flea is you and I, and this our marriage bed and marriage temple is. Though parents grudge and you, we are met, and cloistered in these living walls of jet. Though use make you apt to kill me, let not to that self-murder added be, and sacrilege 3 sins in killing thee. Cruel and sudden. She's killed the flea, by the way. Cruel and sudden, hast thou since purple thy nail in blood of innocence? Wherein could this flea guilty be, except in that drop of which is sucked from thee? Yet thou triumphst and sayest that thou findest not thyself nor me the weaker now. 'Tis true, then learn how false fears be. Just so much honour, when thou yield'st to me, will waste as his flea's death took life from thee. So it's a love poem. So I'm not going for the same vibe as that, but the language used, talking about this flea, like that kind of metaphor, talking about bodily fluids. Ew. Like, it's just, from a modern standpoint, it's a gross poem. It's a love poem, but it's gross. It's got a nice falter, like when I said she's killed the flea. She's basically like, shut up, I'm not gonna sleep with you. But yeah, it's got this semantic field of murder and crime. After she's like killed the flea, he's like cruel and sudden, blood, innocence, guilty, talking about weaker, false fears, death, life. Like, he's talking about, she's like, a murderer, you're a murderer. All because she rejected him through killing a flea. And yeah, so it's the idea that she's killed 3 lives to preserve her big dignity, her virginity. God, she's taken 3 lives to preserve her virginity. So I'm pretty sure, well, I can't remember what, so it was like the flea. This was a while ago. I'm not going to talk about that because you don't really care, because you don't need to know that. I used to know it though. But no, again, the rhyme scheme, it is AABB, but again, you have to say some words slightly different to keep it rhyme. Basically, the thing I liked about this was the language. I'm looking back on it and how I remembered it. It was gross. It's the way he talks about it, the language used. Cruel, sudden blood, death, flea, blood's mingled. I just like thinking back on this, and so when I checked this poem out again, I was like, yeah. And I can't remember specifically what ideas it brought to me, but it just brought inspiration of trying to remember what kind of like metaphors and stuff I can use. And now we're going to talk about a poem which I don't have a copy of and I haven't annotated, but I thought of it as I was writing and I couldn't remember the name of it, but I remember it now. It's His Coy Mistress. So this poem is called To His Coy Mistress, is by Andrew Marvell. When I thought back on this poem, and I never actually looked at it, but I remembered it, a very specific part of it, which was, it's another poem of a man trying to convince a woman to have sex with him, because of course that's a lot of love poetry from the past, I can't lie to you. It's not the best, is it? But somewhere in this poem, and I'll read it again, you're probably sick of hearing my voice, he uses this idea of, when you die, your body's going underground, and the worms are in the ground, and the worms will enter your body, and therefore you will basically have sex with the worms. And therefore, is it so bad that you have sex with me, seeing as you're alive and I'm alive, and then at least the worms won't get to you first, because otherwise you're preserving your virginity for nothing, because the worms will penetrate you when you're dead, underground. Grim, isn't it? It's grim, it's disgusting, it is filthy metaphor, terrible. It's not even a metaphor, it's just that imagery. That's what I want to come across, when I read this poem for the first time and I was writing about it and stuff like that, and I had to do essays on it. But I would never think of anything like that on my own, so that's why I wanted to look at these poems for inspiration. So I'm going to read the poem to you. That's all I really have to say about it. When I come to it, I might have something to say. I haven't read this poem in a long time, so I'm quite excited. So I hope you're ready. Reading it off my phone. He's basically saying, so the actual, yeah, if we had enough time and we did not die, you could conserve your virginity forever. But you're coming up, you're like growing up now, you're getting old. It's time you lost it. And then he says the whole worm thing. Tears coy mistress. Had we but whirled enough and time, this coyness lady were no crime. We would sit down and think which way to walk and pass our love's day. Thou by the Indian Ganges side shouldst rubies find, I by the tide. Of Humber would complain, I would love you 10 years before the flood, and you should, if you please, refuse till the conversion of the Jews. My vegetable love should grow, faster than empires and more slow, and 100 years should go to praise thine eyes, and on thy forehead gaze, 200 to adore each breast, but 30,000 to the rest. An age at least to every part, and the last age should show your heart. For lady, you deserve this state, nor would I love at lower rate. But at my back I always hear time's winged chariot hurrying near, and yonder all before us lie deserts of vast eternity. Thy beauty shall no more be found, nor in thy marble vault shall sound my echoing song. Then worms shall try that long preserved virginity, and your quaint honour turn to dust, and into ashes all my lust. And the grave's fine and private place, but none, I think, do there embrace. Now therefore, while the youthful hue sits on thy skin like morning dew, and while thy willing soul transpires at every pore with instant fires, now let us sport us while we may, and now like amorous birds of prey, rather at once our time devour than languish in his slow chapped power. Let us roll all our strength and all our sweetness up to one ball, and tear our pleasures with rough strife through the iron gates of life. Thus though we cannot make our son stand still, yet we will make him run. Basically, yeah. So he's saying, if we had forever, I would love you for years and years and years. I'd take 100 on each breast, 30,000 for the rest. Spitting bars, if I do say so myself. But then he's like, but we don't have that time, so why are you making me wait so long? And if you're gonna die, we're gonna die, and this preserved virginity of yours, useless, because these worms are gonna take over your body. So yeah, I did think back to that poem when I was writing, and when I was trying to think of ideas for what I was going to be using in my writing, just because it's almost like a graphic poem. It's not a graphic poem, but it almost comes across that way. With just the thought of that, it's grim, truly grim. So that's my video about the poems I looked at and was inspired by and looking back on when I was writing mine. Because it's important to take inspiration from places, and I probably took inspiration from other poems I've read in the past that I didn't put 2 and 2 together to realise that I got that word or that metaphor or whatever from another poem. So if you find something that sounds like another poem in my poem, great, I must have read it. So I hope this wasn't too boring, and I definitely realised I should never do any poetry readings because I simply can't read out loud to save my life, apparently. I think I'm speaking too fast, so I was trying to speak too fast, but when I got into the flow of one of them, it was great. But it's bedtime now. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you enjoy poems. I hope you enjoy my poem. Bye.